Hey everyone, it's Joe. Welcome to another episode of the Future Business Analyst podcast. My guest today is Christelle Govender, who is a business analyst currently with the Spar Group. Christelle is a conference speaker, has published articles, and is passionate about mentoring and growing others. So Christelle, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Joe. I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to chatting a little bit about something we're both passionate about.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no, this is. I'm excited for this. I tell you what, let's actually just dive straight into this. So, if I think you've got about 5 to 10 years BA experience, if I recall, won't you tell me sort of how did you get into the business analysis field? And I got a second question for you as well that I just want to drop in now, which is, do you still see yourself in the profession in 2 years' time?
Okay, so recently you would have seen that all across in LinkedIn, there's been this term, the accidental BA. And I too am an accidental BA. It was definitely not the career that I planned for. I studied BCom and I majored in marketing and human resource management. So, quite by accident, started off my journey as a quality assurer. And during my time as a tester, I worked on a product that had a business analyst. That was my very first encounter with someone that had this title that I had never heard of. And this person was like a superhero. He did everything. He was invested in what type of bugs were being logged, and he wanted to understand how the product was working. And he just seemed to be everywhere all at the same time. And I was fascinated because I had never heard about this job title within software development. That was my very first encounter of the role. And soon I wanted to explore other options, and I found my company had a mentorship program where business analysts actually volunteered their time to
Oh
people
wow.
who were interested in the role. And this is exactly why I'm so passionate about mentorship, because I know how much it takes out of people to volunteer time. It's easy to give money, it's easy to give, tangible things, but to give your time, it takes a lot out of someone to invest in someone else. And these people just volunteered their time, and there they were, a wealth of knowledge, just waiting to have conversations with people who wanted to know more about this career. Because bearing in mind, it's not the clear cut study this and become a business
Mm.
analyst. Everyone's role, everyone's journey is somewhat different. So very greedily, I signed up for, I think, like 5 mentors, and I just had the most amazing conversations with them about their journeys and what they did on a day-to-day basis. And I began shadowing them. So they actually shared parts of their tasks with me, which I would work on during lunch or after work. And of course, my managers were aware of it. So before long, I had actually built up business analyst experience. And in the
Okay.
meanwhile, I was doing a few courses. So when the opportunity arose and there was a vacancy, I applied, and that's how I became a business analyst. But to answer your question of, do I see myself in this role in the next 2 years? 100%. I absolutely love being a business analyst. I cannot see myself doing anything else but business analysis. And I hope to be that mentor to someone else, not just in the next 2 years, but as long as I can.
That's fantastic. Yeah, let it go full circle, right?
Mhm.
Paying it back. What a fantastic opportunity that is. What a great place to work. Sort of these people, as you say, time is a very precious thing. So I think it's wonderful, and you just grabbing all of it, right? I'll have all 5 of you, please, because
Yes.
um, and I think that's really good because, like you highlighted in there, sort of every BA is different. Everybody does it a little bit differently. So now you're not sort of sat there going, "Well, this is the one way of doing it." You're learning that there are potentially 5 different ways of doing something. No, well done, you. And I mean, as you say, like the moment that job opportunity opened up, it probably had your name already attached to it because, as you say, the leadership had spotted you spending your lunch times shadowing, doing work. So no, I think that's brilliant, and I'm glad to hear you're going to be in this in 2 years' time as well. It definitely is the profession that keeps on giving. I'm going to come back to one of your words that you dropped in there. What an excellent segue you've given me. Superhero, right? Won't you please describe to me what you think the BA of the future might be a little bit like?
So, Joe, I'm a massive Marvel fan, not to be confused with DC, which is Superman and Batman. Yes, I'm one of those people that get highly offended when people confuse the two. But I'm a massive Marvel fan, and when I think about the business analyst of the future, I believe that they're going to have a few characteristics very close to the Avengers. So the first would be the leadership qualities of Captain America. I believe that a BA is a leader, and we have the ability to make change, drive change, and to lead a team, not necessarily by title, but just by how we do things, how we handle every day, how we handle our interactions with our team, with our stakeholders. I believe that that is leadership, being able to identify strengths of the different people in your team and unify those strengths to achieve a goal. And again, I must emphasize not because of title, but because your team believes in you and you believe in your team. And that's something that I relate to Captain America, and I believe the business analyst of the future would have mastered that. The next is the AI and technology of Iron Man and Wakanda, so the Black Panther. Uh, Iron Man had a lot of things at his disposal, one of which was money. And I believe that sometimes business analysts struggle to get the buy in of the business to say, we need this tool or we need something to help us with our day to day job. I believe that in 10 years from now, the business analyst won't be having those discussions anymore. The business will believe in the value that a business analyst is able to bring to the overall business and what they're trying to achieve. So it won't be a question of, no, we're not giving you the money. It will be how much and how soon. And I believe that we would have the technology at our disposal to make a difference. You know, AI is the buzz right now, Chat GPT, and while you have two distinct groups of people, one who believe this is the end of humanity and we're never going to have a need for our skill set, there are the others who I hope all the business analysts are part of that group who see an opportunity to use technology to better our everyday work and to add value in a more efficient way. So I believe that's what the business analyst would do. They would look at technology and see all the opportunities. And they will see the threats, not that they will be blind to the threats, but they will be able to turn those threats into opportunities. They would also have the emotional intelligence of Dr. Bruce Banner, not when he's the Hulk, but when he's Dr. Bruce Banner and he's able to incorporate his IQ and his EQ and just handle himself in really tough situations. And then I also believe that the business analyst of the future will have the ability to bounce back from failure, like Thor. Thor went through some really serious changes in his whole superhero journey, but he was able to bounce back from that. And I think the business analyst of the future would have a different view of fear. They would not be afraid of it. They would fail fast, fail quickly, get it over with, learn from it, move forward. It wouldn't be something to be afraid of. And I just think the business analyst of the future will have the perfect blend of the soft skills and the curiosity for technology and be able to bring those two together and add value to the organization that they're in.
Yes, that's some pedestal you're putting us on for the future, isn't it? Like this blend of all the best bits of these Avengers. Um, am I hearing that there might be a little sort of conference presentation in the making here? I don't know. I feel like this might come together there. But
Watch the space.
yeah, okay. I mean, obviously, the Avengers are a team, right? I mean, you started off talking about leadership and teamwork and things. The Avengers are a team, and they've each got positives and negatives about them all. As much as you've sung these guys' strengths here, they've all got a weakness as well that they sort of need to overcome, don't they? So maybe we start with Thor, that resilience that's going to be needed to be able to bounce back. I definitely think that is something that's going to be needed, because I would imagine that experimentation is going to become more prevalent in our day-to-day work. Like, if there is more change coming than we've ever experienced before, that means that we're going to have to be constantly sort of catching things, testing them out, feasibility, and there's going to be failure in there. So definitely we're going to have to bounce back from that, as well as people's commentary on our failure. So that probably
Definitely.
covers Wakondi too, because of this tech. Yeah, there's going to be a ton of different tech. Do you feel we get involved enough in tech early enough?
No, I don't think so. I think right now it is better than it was, that's for sure. But I think we're still in that reactive phase then rather than being proactive. I think I think we're still sort of like in the phase where technology is happening to us and we're not happening to technology. But it's definitely getting better, and I see that we're taking active steps. We're having those discussions. We may not have may not be having it at the right time. We're still very reactive, but I think we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit more R&D in our life, I think, even
Yes.
if it's in our own spare time at lunch times and after work. I'm aware that companies have R&D departments. They'll have people who are perhaps looking at, the stuff that's on the horizon. But I do think as you say, it happens to us. We don't happen to it, and I definitely think we can change that. Um, Bruce Banner, I feel like to a degree we've already nailed Bruce down a little bit. It is that IQ, it's that knowledge, it's those soft skills, it's that knowledge worker, right? And we've done the knowledge work thing. I feel like we're okay there. Um, let's go Captain America. Yeah, I love the fact that you highlight leadership. I think it from BAs it needs more focus. If we are to get more money, like budget for things, if we are to be able to catch technology or go after technology a little sooner, I feel like we need to be trusted leaders. Like, we need to be out at the front here. And I like what you say about, it's not being granted a title. We're not knighted a leader. And I actually think it's easier to lead without authority, because then you actually have to use your influencing skills in order to bring people along on the journey with you. Whereas when you have a title, people just often blindly follow because somebody said. But let's come back to this Iron Man. I've always felt with the shoemaker without shoes. You talk about this utopia, which is probably this Wakanda as well, right? This utopia where I can ask for money and I get given it. I'm not used to that. That's going to take some getting used to. But business analysis, I feel, was trending once. Like, it was sexy once. I
Mhm.
feel like it's lost some of that sexiness around organizations, executives, and budgets. It's not the thing that gets funded. There are many other things that get funded. So I'm just going to say sexy things get funded, and the things that don't get funded aren't as sexy anymore. How do you see this changing then? How are we going to bring the sexy back to business analysis to get the execs to fund us?
I have to say, Joe, that sounds like a conference title. How do we bring the sexy back to business analysis? I hear what you're saying because businesses seem to be more interested in data science and data analytics and business analytics and everything that sounds like business analysis but is not business analysis. But they've always needed someone to bridge the gap. Traditionally, business analysts bridged the gap between what the business wanted and what the technology could do. And now that they have all these other disciplines of data science and business analytics, they still need someone to bridge the gap to understand what the data is actually telling us and what we're trying to achieve. And now, how do we utilize the technology to bridge the gap between what the data is telling us and where we want to go? You've just got an additional player in the game. And I think it's important to remind them that when I say them, I mean the business, the guys who have the deep pockets, that you need someone who's able to understand all aspects of business. And I think that also goes for us as analysts to stop putting ourselves in a box. I only draw process flow diagrams. I only write requirements documents. Well, our title is Business Analyst. And as basic as a 5-year old will say, so do you analyze the business? I think that's actually the most accurate definition of what we do. We analyze where the business is. And you know what? We use every business function to do that. We need every business function to be able to do that and to advise the business. There's outside factors impacting the business, there's internal factors. They still need someone who's able to speak those different functional business functions to be able to speak those languages. I think a lot of why we don't get the funding is because we've forgotten how sexy we are as business analysts. We've forgotten how much value we can bring to the table. And when the business said, okay, this one budget, we're not going to give you the money, we just sat back and said, okay. And here we are years later, still sitting in the same situation. It's because we've allowed it. I don't want to be in a box. Business analysts are too sexy to be in a box.
Yeah. What box? I think is always my answer to outside of the box. What box? You mentioned lots of language. You mentioned languages in there, and I know that you've got some thoughts around the languages that BAs speak. So let me just pull you into that part of it. Talk to me a little bit about how you see the future and sort of who we might be communicating with.
Yeah, so traditionally, my elevator pitch of what a business analyst does was I'm bilingual. I speak two languages. I speak business and I speak technology. So I'm able to translate what the business wants, take it over to the guys who sit with their black hoodies and their headphones on in the little dark rooms and say to them, well, this is what the business wants to do. Let's see what the technology can do. And then take the binary that the guys in the dark room speak, take it back to the business and, not play broken telephone where we take the wrong message, but make sure that the correct message is being delivered and we're ultimately adding value. How I see that definition changing is we're now multilingual. It's not just enough to speak technology and speak business. There's other aspects, there's other influencing factors to what we do as a business. For example, I'm in the fast moving consumer goods sector of business. There's so many factors impacting what we do. I mean, there's sustainable farming, there's supply chain models, there's marketing, there's competitor analysis, there's a worldwide market, there's so many factors. So I can't just be in this little box and say, well, I'm going to draw a process flow diagram for an
Yeah.
online shopping tool. I need to be able to speak multiple languages and see where we're trying to go as a business as a whole. So that's how I see the definition changing. We're going to be multilingual business analysts.
Yeah. No, I think it's fantastic. It's Babel, isn't it? It's just
Yes.
being able to communicate across boundaries. And I'm going to bring in the chameleon here too as well. Probably haven't used the word chameleon for a few years, but I always felt like when we get out into the organisation, we need to be able to influence, to be able to communicate, be able to just build rapport with different
Yep.
people from the execs in the boardroom down to a guy who is perhaps in some kind of broom cupboard, and just be able to treat everybody differently within that, to be able to blend in and to be able to build that rapport, to ask the right questions and get the answers that we need. And I think if we combine that sort of Babel with that chameleon in, that probably is going to be quite a super heroic BA. You're going to have to come up with some kind of name and costume for that person, I think, Christelle. But yeah, yeah, it's interesting to say that the definition sort of changes because our scope increases.
Yeah.
Really. Um, okay. You mentioned talking of asking questions. Tell me about a hack that you use successfully. Something you can maybe pass on for me to get use out of.
A hack. Okay, so it's a very basic hack, but during remote calls, I found it very difficult to build those relationships that you spoke about, to gain trust, to ensure that my team believed I was able to add value and I was not just here asking questions for the sake of asking questions and wasting their time. So I was new to the team and I had to make them believe that I'm here for them. I'm on the side of the team, you know? So no, it was very difficult to build those relationships. And the hack that that I started off with was sitting exactly where I'm sitting now with my refrigerator behind me.
Time machine.
It, it's my time machine, but it was what I call nonverbal cues,
Okay.
conversation starters. And it could be just about anything. I could keep a guitar behind me. Sooner or later, someone's going to ask me in a meeting, Christelle, do you play guitar? And here we go. We're having a conversation totally unrelated to work, but I'm able to build a relationship. Because what was much easier pre COVID, when we were in the office and I would walk past your desk and know that you're a comrades runner and say, hey, Joe, you know, comrades was this past weekend. And we'd be able to have a conversation. It's much more difficult if you're
Mm,
in a hybrid environment, if you're in a fully remote environment. And it's only going to continue being that way because this is the way of life. We're always going to be communicating through some sort of remote
mm.
technology. So we have to get used to a way to build human relationships through a screen. So my hack is nonverbal cues and conversation starters. Um, Today I have my refrigerator behind me that has pictures of my family and magnets from places that I've traveled to. And sometimes I wear a football jersey. I am a Manchester United supporter. It gets a lot of people revved up during meetings. If they're Liverpool supporters, the Champions League has just finished and Manchester City won. And you know what? We have some really cool pre meeting conversations that just help build relationships. So my hack is nonverbal cues.
Okay.
Wear your funky t-shirts. Try it in your team. Wear a funky t-shirt to work day. I actually did that in my team, and people wore funky t-shirts to stand up, and everyone actually put their camera on, which some people didn't do
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah.
That's my
That's really nice. I feel like it also slows things down. When we have these virtual meetings and we are in front of the camera all day, we're pretty excited for those meetings to end, right? So we can stand up and walk away. So often these meetings are just how quickly can we get through them? So it's nice that you know, as you say, it's going to start conversation, build rapport, and just start to slow things down. Um, I'm not going to comment on the Manchester United. I was talking about trending just now, saying sort of business analysis might not be trending. You highlighted sort of data science might be, agile probably still is a little bit. Um, but what trends do you think are going to impact our sort of future work?
So there's a few trends that I see impacting, and not just in the future. You already see traces of it now. And the one that we just mentioned was related to the hack that I shared, and that's remote working, hybrid teams, co-located teams, whatever you want to call it. It's here to stay. COVID was just a catalyst for a major change in how we do business, how we work day to day with our teams, how our business exists in the greater context of our customer journeys. They're becoming more complex. A lot of things are moving online. People buy groceries online, banking online. We do everything online. So this way of working is something that we're going to have to get used to, and I see it trending for a very long time. I don't see it going away. I don't see the traditional let's all go to the office 5 days a week ever being the way it was pre 2020. The other, like I mentioned, was data. You see the big push towards data driven decisions, collecting the right information, knowing what to use that information for. And of course, coupled with that, data security, which is something that business analysts need to focus on. We need to make sure that we include cybersecurity, data security. There's laws for the different countries that we may find ourselves working in, wherever our software is operating or our solution is operating. I think data is the currency of life, but it's probably the commodity that's treated with the least amount of security. Like if diamonds are in transit, you will see the security around it. But because we don't necessarily physically see data moving, I think we've forgotten the security mindset around it. So I think it's something that business analysts can also drive
Mm.
from an organization perspective. Then, of course, it's the whole nimble versus agile. I imagine this is what the discussion must have sounded like when it was waterfall versus agile. And it's almost like we're reaching a point where agile is not enough for how we do things, how we work as an organization, because the change is happening so fast. It's not just being agile, it's how you respond to the change. Are you nimble enough? Are you quickly responding to opportunities and recognizing change? So I think that's going to be trending for a while. And we may just find ourselves with a new working methodology. Who knows? But if the change is so rapid and the way we're working is not helping us enough, I think we may actually find ourselves studying a new manifesto in place of the agile manifesto. And then, of course, AI,
Mm.
ChatGPT, I think is going to change the trajectory of the business analyst career. I certainly don't think it's ever going to replace it, but it's definitely going to have an impact on how we do day to day things, which brings me to my last point, which is change management.
Okay.
Uh, the only thing constant in life is change. It's the only thing guaranteed. And I think that's going to be a trend that we see a lot. It's going to be rapid, it's going to be on all aspects of our life. And any change that affects humanity or affects technology is going to affect business analysts as a career. Because here we are at the forefront of technology and how it serves humanity. So I think these things that are trending are going to impact where the business analyst profession goes in the next 10 years.
There's a lot of things, aren't there, that can influence this. I mean, it's quite incredible. I mean, I was jotting down. You talked about process data security. Then I've dropped UI in, interfaces, functions. You know, there's a quip that says that BA stands for be anything, and I'm a great believer that we can do so much. Um, I feel like, I actually want to say, no, that's the BA's job. No, that's also the BA's job. No, get your hands off that. BA should be doing that. And you end up sort of ticking off like half the functions in the
Mm.
business, because we do have that broad skill, that deep knowledge that means we can do things. But there are specialists in each of these areas. There'll be data specialists, there'll be process specialists, security specialists, UX specialists, functional analysts. That, in each of these things that we mentioned, there are specialist jobs that do them. But then we're a bit like that sort of proverbial GP, the general practitioner. We can do each of these. We may not get right down into the detail and understand, all the pros and cons of everything. But our skills are quite broad. And I often think, like, where does the job end?
Mm.
Do you see us like basically getting more strings to our bow and becoming more general practitioners, or could you see us being sort of pulled down a particular specialist path? In fact, the only specialist path that's jumping to my head now is perhaps requirements engineering, that systems analysis. We could sort of almost get pushed back into that space. What do you think?
I think it's up to us to make sure we're not pushed back into that space. I think your team needs to be able to see the value, not you necessarily, not the but the value that is being added by a business analyst in a team. So, you spoke about the GP, and I think that's probably the best analogy for a business analyst because you get the flu more often than you need a specialist to operate on you.
Mm,
So, more often than not, you go to a GP who then refers you to a specialist. You can't exactly get an appointment with a specialist. You don't just walk into a neurosurgeon's
mm,
doctor's room and ask for an appointment. You have to have a referral letter from a GP
mm.
who's able to direct you and say, this is actually where you need to go. So I think that's what the business analyst is, the multilingual person who's able to say, you know what, you actually need another discussion with a specialist in this area who speaks Italian, who speaks data security for your specific need. But we're still able to diagnose that situation. And sometimes maybe our antibiotics will be enough. Sometimes you may need a surgery, but
Yeah,
we'll at least point you in the right direction. And as far as, but isn't that the wonderful thing about being a business analyst? You could be a GP for 20 years and then suddenly decide, I want to specialize in neurosurgery. So
yeah,
you could be a business analyst
yeah,
for however many years, and you have this opportunity to go further into one of the disciplines within
yeah,
business analysis.
yeah,
But I think it's
yeah.
wonderful that we have all these strings in our
Yeah, we
bow.
do. Yeah, no, it is. And I'm like, and people say, "Oh, your career path is a project manager," and I just think, like, how many different things? There are so many like rivers flowing from this. You could take any one of them and spend 2 years, spend 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
it's an interesting point. You sort of took my GP idea and you took it a little bit further, which is, wouldn't it be great if people came to us as that point of contact, knowing that we could pass them on to somebody else? Like we had to write that letter of request, and pass it on. Whereas at the moment, perhaps people sort of go past us or over our heads or whatever to get to that person. It doesn't come through us. Do you think we could maybe position ourselves better to say, like, here we are, we're at the forefront of this. Hello, Mr. Mrs. Stakeholder. I'm here for all your needs. And trust me, if there's something that you need that goes a little bit deeper than my typical expertise, I will hold your hand and pass you on to the next person.
Definitely. That's where the leadership comes in. That's why we said leadership without title, because it's how you position yourself, how you build those relationships. It's not an overnight thing like a title change. It takes time, it takes investment, it takes having those meetings, building those bridges, ensuring that you're communicating to that stakeholder the way they want to be communicated to. Some stakeholders like an email, some like a Teams message, some like you to walk over to their desk and give them an update. Do you know your stakeholders that way? Do you know exactly what they want, when they want it, and in what format they want it? And I think it's up to us to position ourselves at that forefront. No one's going to wake up and say, here, like you said, I knight you, person who stands at the door for all stakeholders. You
Yeah.
have to build that up, and it's important that we know it's not an overnight thing,
Mm. Yeah.
because I could be a BA in this team today and go to another team within my organization tomorrow and have to rebuild that position all over again because it's a different set of stakeholders. I think that's the fun part. It shouldn't be looked at as a challenge because you get to no 2 days at work are the same. Who gets to call out all boring? No one,
Mm.
because each day is different. So I think the important thing to know is that it's not an overnight solution.
It won't be, no. Um, And I'm getting a thought here, which it was broadly summarized as process versus people. So, you know, there is the job title BA, but it's not the job title that gets you that access or permission. It's the individual who happens to have that job title that gets that access and permission by influencing, by leading. So it's not like they're going to say, okay, this is now the role of a BA. They're going to say, actually, Christelle, you come here, you help me. And they're looking at you. They're not looking at the title. They're looking for you for help. And then when you go, there's probably big shoes for somebody else to fill. But they're not going to say, okay, that's the role of the BA now. It's just going to go down that Christelle helped with that stuff. And where I'm going with this as well is you mentioned nimble versus agile. And while you were talking about that, I was also thinking people versus process. And what I'm getting at here is, sure, people can come up with the next methodology. They can write some steps that need to be followed and some rules and manifestos that govern it. But I know a ton of methods. I know a ton of notations. I've spent my entire career reading and learning. So I've got it all, but I don't follow any of it, right? I do bits of it. I blend it together in a way that makes sense for that piece of work or that moment in time where I am. So what I'm getting at here is it's the person. It's like having that stuff ingrained in the person is more important than having that stuff written down and telling people to follow it. Having that permission, that access is again about the person. It's not about putting the process in place to do it. Do you think that it's individuals who are going to be able to shape the future rather than, I suppose it's like go and do it and ask forgiveness later? Is that sort of where we're at? Are we looking for brave individuals to go out to drive this profession forward?
Oh, definitely. Definitely brave individuals to go forward. I mean, a few years ago, there weren't cybersecurity IIBA courses where you could certify yourself. There was some brave individual who had a deep curiosity for that, and now we have an IIBA certification for it. Because we're in one of those careers where there's not that typical study this degree and you're now a qualified BA, it's up to us to shape where we see this career going. And we've got to stand up and say, you know what, this is the role of a business analyst. This is what we see us as a profession being able to do. And who knows, maybe in between that you might actually end up with those degrees or courses like the IIBA security one, and you may not, but you'll certainly have a clearer path to follow for the next generation of business analysts who would actually know what a business analyst does. And they would be in school, and just as they say, I want to be a doctor and I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a software developer, they would say, I want to be a business analyst, because the path would be much more clearer because of some brave individuals who stood up and said, this is the career, this is what it means, this is what this profession means.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this is a crazy thought or not, but this is why I love these conversations with people like you. It's fantastic. It gets me thinking about stuff I might not have considered before. You talked about change management 2 minutes ago, right? If we think what change management is, it's basically getting people ready for what's coming. It's helping to smooth that transition for something.
Yep.
How about if we did change management on our stakeholders about how we are going to change and what's coming? It would almost be like it'd be giving them forewarning of us coming to do this, almost getting permission to do it before we did it, because we told you we're going to come and do this. You're expecting us, aren't you? Right? You're expecting this. How about we do some change management on our stakeholders then to start to shape what we're going to deliver in the future?
Definitely. And to shape where our influence is going to be more focused on, not so much on outputs and deliverables, but on those conversations, on unpacking these ideas, exactly like how we're having a conversation now and we're unpacking ideas. We want to position our influence to sit with stakeholders and unpack ideas for the future. So we're going to manage our stakeholders in relation to where we are taking this profession.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic because then, it's a bit like that comment you made with the technology earlier. Then, that's not just going to happen to us, but we are happening to it. We're putting our sort of our stakes down and giving the wheel a spin. I think that would be great. Um, Lastly, with all this change, with all this remote work, and I know that sort of remote work, based on your little hack earlier, is something that's very close to your heart, of great interest to you. You said it's not going away. The thought that popped into my head at that point is I think it probably depends on who you are and where you are, right? I think retail is going to be different to finance. I think South Africa is going to be different to the USA. There are traditions, there are cultures, there are powers that perhaps are different in different places. But I do think there's definitely going to be a blend. There's going to be a mix. So it's that word hybrid. And something that is coming about more frequently now is hybrid meetings, hybrid workshops. Let's go for a workshop rather than a meeting. Meetings are easy, workshops are hard work. How can we manage hybrid sessions where, let's just say, 50% of stakeholders are online, 50% are in the room? Because that's quite a tricky thing to do. How can we bring those people together and try and give them a similar experience?
I recently attended a course on communication, and one of the things that came out was every meeting or workshop or every interaction has a practical need that we need to fulfill. So, in the case of a workshop, there's an education or learning outcome. In the case of stakeholder meetings, you maybe need a requirement or there's some practical need, some output. But every encounter has about five personal needs, all of which have to be met. So it's not I ticked three off and I got the practical need, so the meeting was a success. Every personal need has to be fulfilled in order for a meeting to be a success. And it sounded so mushy, like it's so emotional, but it's so true. Every person in the meeting needs to feel included, respected, valued, safe enough to contribute. And that's whether the meeting or the workshop is being a hybrid, whether it's in person, whether it's fully remote. So for me, it's deliberate inclusion because I can meet a practical need very easily. I come from a testing background, and checklists
Mm,
were my everyday thing. So I come in, I look at a piece of software, I did the checklist, and I'm done. But did I assure quality, or did I tick a checklist?
yeah,
Did I have a workshop, or did I pass on a learning outcome to every individual who was present in that meeting? That's the difference. And it's a deliberate inclusion that results in that value, not just ticking a checklist. And I could have been excellent in delivering the workshop, but nobody left with a learning outcome
yeah,
because the 50% who were logged in remotely were asleep or
yeah,
checking on the cat or
yeah,
updating their Instagram because they were not deliberately included. So I think if I had to sum it up, deliberate inclusion. Call people out by names, use the technology, create those virtual rooms for breakout sessions. Technology will be there to aid us, but we have to deliberately include everyone.
I like that. I think that's great. Two simple words, but deliberate inclusion. And by doing that, you make it fair as well, because you're going to include people
Mm.
regularly. Everybody's going to get the same amount of airtime, the same, get picked on, get their names called out the same number of times as well. And if we do that frequently, I don't think we're going to give them time to drift off and check whatever
Exactly.
whatever they are checking. Okay, I think that's a great note to end this on. Thank you for including yourself in this little podcast series. It's been great hanging with you today, Christelle. I'm looking forward to hanging with you in when is it? October BA Summit this year, isn't it?
Yes,
October, November.
yes,
That's going to be
this
cool.
October.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking forward to hanging with you as well, Joe. And thank you for this amazing opportunity.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming on and braving the pod. Thank you, Christelle.
For the second time. Second
Ah,
time.
I'd forgotten.
You thought I
Yes,
was going to let that go. So this is the second time that we're recording this because Joe forgot to press record. So we did an entire podcast that was not recorded.
that was not
So
recorded.
second
Yeah.
time lucky.
I was so bleak, but I was very grateful for your graciousness when I broke the news to you that I had not recorded. Not my happiest moment at all. And I'm glad you've left. I'd actually totally forgotten that you were going to bring that up. I'm glad you left it to the end because only the hardcore who listened through to this point will actually get that, reach this point. Awesome. Cheers, Christelle.
Thanks, Joe. Cheers. Bye.